case you can't tell, I don't do this very often. That's not part of my job. But it's a friendly audience, so maybe we can have some fun with it. When I did this, again, it was 4 or 5 years ago for the society. I just went through these, and turned out there were quite a few people that were there at the meeting that were kind of interested in this. So I'm hoping that will be the case today. We'll see. And what I did that time was, I was always told when you do a presentation, you need to do a little bit of an introduction. Most of you already know me, right? Although one thing has changed since the last time I did, well, a few things, is I got the honor, and I consider it a tremendous honor, to be asked by the town manager to be the town historian. And my predecessor, as most of you will know, was Warren Carey, who was well, there's nothing I can add to what's already been said about Warren. So those are some pretty big shoes to fill. And that's why I say it is very much an honor to be doing that. And the thing is, when I was asked, when I had this conversation with the town manager, I kind of wondered if I was old enough to be a town manager. Back then, 4 or 5 years ago, I was in my mid-50s, just turned 60 last month. So, but I figure, hey, do the best you can, Bill, right? And, but I still, there's still that uncertainty. And, you want to have confidence when you step into a role and you're doing that role, right? So this morning, though, I think I got some confirmation. So I had my jog early before, because I wanted to get that out of the way. And my route takes me by a playground in Andover, just over the line in Andover. I don't know if you guys are familiar with North Tewksbury, but Pinnacle Road goes in Andover, becomes Blanchard, and there's a new playground, ball field up there. So I go off the road a little, and I go through there, and I come back out. So I'm going through, and there was a mom, and I'm assuming it was the mom, and a little boy. They were playing, and she was shagging while the boy dropped. So I'm just going at my slow jogging pace, and I'm approaching the boy, and I get up to him, and I give him a little space because because of the virus and no mask. Even before. But just before I go by him, all of a sudden he looks up and he says, "Hi, old man." And I'm like, I wasn't expecting him to say anything. I'm like, wait. Now I have friends who are real quick on, they can come right back with something. That's not me. I need a little time to process. I have a slower, an older chip. Okay, so I compose myself. And so the mom, again, I'm assuming it's the mom. Maybe I shouldn't do that, but probably. And she's walking, she's walking with the ball she shagged. And she looks at me, and of course, she looks at me like she's embarrassed, right? Because I know that feeling. My daughter's put me in that situation a few times some years ago. And so I looked at her, and I said, he's right. So there it is. I have official confirmation. I'd say it was 3 or 4, that I am old enough to be a town historian. So I'll tell you, that made my day. All right, so the upgraded version of this presentation, hopefully you guys will, some of you, like I said, will remember it. Now, I know how to do this with the space bar. Do I just click? Oh, look at that. So we already did that. This is a new slide. Nancy gave me this one. I like this because it shows, my first version of this, I had some old historic, you guys familiar with topographic maps? The United States Geological Survey? Well, the University of New Hampshire has archived a bunch of pretty old ones. Some of them late 1800s and the 40s and the 50s. So I had some of those as background for the last one, but I changed it around. But Nancy gave me this one, and it shows, I wanted to ask this question. Does anyone know where Tewksbury Junction is? Or what Tewksbury, has anyone here heard of Tewksbury Junction?
Is it in West Tewksbury? West Tewksbury?
No, it's,
I think it's on North Street,
Oh, yeah.
just a little way up from me.
Not that.
In front of the town hall?
No.
Here? Okay.
no. All right, well, this what looks like a triangle in railroad terms is called the Y, W-Y-E, and it shows the convergence of, this was the Lowell Salem Railroad, right? So I believe the Lowell Lawrence branch was built first, but I'll have to check that. So it came in from Lowell over here. This area of Tewksbury now is South Lowell, North Billerica, Woburn Street, right? I was just over there last night because there are remains of the abutment for the bridge that went over the river, Concord River, into South Lowell is still there, although it's pretty obscure. I've got some pictures of it, but it's very obscured by ivy and stuff. Anyway, so it came in, went behind Astle Street, came into Wamasett, Old Main Street, goes underneath Main Street, and then runs along behind, mostly behind Main Street, fairly parallel the Cart Railroad, which is a little further north, and crossed North Street, and then ran and still runs. The right-of-way is still there, behind the cemetery, and then between the cemetery and behind Chandler Street, behind the senior center. Okay. And it came out, basically, if you go to the end of Chandler, the last couple of houses, as you're coming out of Chandler, on your left, are built on former right-of-way here. What is now Jones Farm was Tewksbury Junction. That's this Y here. And on this side here, this is the Lowell Salem branch. This goes, eventually goes to Salem, goes through Wilmington, North Reading, Peabody. And then this here, at the top point of the Y here, this is the branch going to Lawrence. So this crosses Pinnacle Road. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Goes up behind my neighborhood, goes, and if you ever on Bellevue Road in Andover, and at the bottom of the hill, they actually have an entrance there now for the it's over here. So what remains of the right-of-way, and on the other side of the road, they've had behind, I think it's Ironstone is the horse place over there. It runs behind there, used to cross 133, and then eventually runs around behind Barron's. And if you've ever gone to Haggett's Pond, and if you've ever taken that walk in Haggett's Pond, that's also the right-of-way for the Lowell branch here. And it takes you all the way into South Lawrence. So that's why I like this map, because it shows you Tewksbury Junction. If you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there, because unfortunately it's been obscured by development. Last time I did this, there's a bunch of basically history of the road, but I think what's important is the timing here. So the timing of the railroad is similar, is close in the same time frame as the Tewksbury Almshouse, the original state hospital. And as an aside, if you look at the history of the almshouses in the state, like for example, the one in I believe ours is the only one that is still in use. The one in Danvers, Hawthorne. No, sorry, I can't remember the name of it. But it's been turned into commercial, I believe, condominiums. But you'll notice that there's a railroad going there as well. And these railroads are all connected, and this is how people got to and from, back in these days in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. This is how people got to and from the almshouses. In fact, I guess, I don't know if I want to say she's our most famous resident, part-time resident, but Ann Sullivan and her brother, that's how they arrived. They arrived by our railroad. So as time went on, in those days, individual companies, private companies, went to the state for a charter for a railroad, and they built competing lines. That's why we have, again, a lot of people don't realize the Lawrence Lowell Salem lines, right? But you could get between the Boston and Lowell, which is still in use by MBTA, right? That was one of the earlier, I think that may have been the first line chartered in the state, was the Boston Lowell, which basically took the similar route as Middlesex Canal and put the Middlesex Canal out of business, right? You could get between that and the line over in Andover, Wilmington, multiple ways. And so these charters gave these companies exclusive rights for certain routes for a period of time. And the Lowell Salem line, they violated the one that was given to what became the B&M, what became the line that is still in use today. And so over time, they wrangle it out, and eventually the Boston and Maine eventually owned all of the lines, absorbed all the lines. And as time went on, there was a lot of, again, duplication. 1874 here is when the line is still in use in town was built. And it was built, as you can see by that map, it had to cross the Lawrence branch of the Lowell Lawrence. And I have a picture of what's left of what was the underpass. And of course, we know from recently, there's also another underpass. We have the form for that, right? The cow. Yeah. So again, that was the one that was kept. How they made these decisions over time, don't know, but that's the one. And so in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and into, believe it or not, the 2000s, you'll see, sections of the Lowell Lawrence, Lowell Salem were abandoned and not used, or went from carrying people, transportation, or just freight. In fact, when we get to it, Warren Carey, in one of our historical commission meetings years ago, told me how he remembered the freight lines still be in use behind Main Street between North Street and I guess Wamisit. And they used to, Doug, I don't know if you're probably not old enough to remember this, but pardon me? No, I know. That's what I said. I got to be careful here. Well, I won't say it. I believe he said he remembered in the summers when they would bring, I believe it was cattle on freight cars, still in his lifetime. And so if you can see, it shows basically the dates when certain sections were abandoned. But notice this, when I was looking at this again, getting ready for this, I'd forgotten that, look at the date, 2004. It's that recent that they were officially the, whatever legal documents, probably deeds, you would know this better, Doug, how they do the right-of-ways as easements and things. Those, I'm guessing that when they say official, they're talking about that kind of, those kinds of documents and agreements.
Well, some of the tracts, areas were sold. I know Mark Ginsburg bought, several of them.
Really, yeah.
We have the walking trails and bike trails that these have become, so they've been put to other use, but positive use.
Right, right. Yeah, at the end, I've got some info on that. So this basically was the, just the route of the railroad. Now, did anyone know about this? There was a spur off the main line that ran behind the senior center. Did anyone know about, you know about? You did, sir, yeah. So you see where it ends, like if you go the parking lot in the back of the senior center, if you look, you can see. I ran into that just exploring the right-of-way between the cemetery and as far as you can go behind Chandler Street. Go ahead, Pat.
What's the Lowell bleachery?
Oh, yeah, that's an area of Lowell over, I think it's Bolt Street. It's over, just on the other side of the Concord River from, are you guys familiar with that area, Prince Spaghettiville?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Lawrence Street. It's behind, it's just behind there on the other side of that's what they called it back. That's where a bunch of lines. Iron Horse Park in Billerica, you guys familiar with that? That was a big rail yard where lines would come in and there were multiple lines in the yard. And this is where they would build up the trains, put the cars together, et cetera. The bleachery was like that. And that was just the term they gave it. But yeah, I didn't know about it until I was back there and I just noticed it going off in that direction, and sure enough. But yes, sir.
Back in 1854, when the Tewksbury Hospital was, Arms House was going up, how at that time would one get from there to Boston and back?
There was a station, I have a list of stations somewhere, it's not in the slides, but there was a station over the hospital station. I forget exactly where it was, but I believe it was over where, if you're on East Street, heading towards Andover, and you pass the pine where the cemetery is in the pine, and you go and you just Maple Street. Just before Maple Street, the Salem branch came. That's what runs behind at the back of that field there, where that public utility building is. I think it's a water building or pump house. That is the right of way, and it crossed the road there and went behind. If you noticed, went behind the field. That's where they grow out, where they're farming. And I believe there was a station there, the hospital station was there. But again, also that spur, it looks like, I haven't confirmed this, but if you look at maps and you look at what's left, what's currently there on the state hospital property, it looks like it came right across where the intersection is, where with East Street, Chandler and East Street, and right across there's a drive. It goes up the side there, just inside of, as Chandler comes right down here, it all lines up, and it looks as though that was the spur. So that was one of the other ways.
So they would take that to another place and get on another train to Boston? Or?
Right, yeah, because it connected, it went to, it connected with at Wilmington Junction.
Or Wilmington?
And with Wilmington Junction, you have which still exists. It's just, it still exists, but there's no connection there. But that's the B&M line going, yeah, connected there. And I believe it also connected with the Boston Lowell. But I'd have to confirm that, but definitely. There was a station at Wilmington Junction. In fact, there was one of our, is it Lars? The writer for the Town Crier. He did a presentation here.
Last.
Thank you. He wrote an article on Wilmington Station and Wilmington Junction, and there was a station there. There was a picture in the time frame that the Lowell Salem line is still connected there. So, and the right of way is still there. I've been down there.
Can I ask you a question? There was a picture in the archive that showed all kinds of tracks going in front of where the town common is, the big town common. It showed all kinds of tracks going there. Is that just going in all different directions?
When you see the town common, Wilmington or our,
Tewksbury, I'm sorry, let me just back in Tewksbury.
I'm gonna guess it's trolley, but I don't know. I'd have to look it up for you.
Could be right. It wasn't obvious, it was just tracks. Okay.
There we go. All right, so this is the fun. Again, some of you have seen these. Actually, we have one of them is on the table over there. Most of these were hand-picked by David for the first time I did this. We added a few more. Nancy suggested some. But so this is the Wamasett Station, the current Boston Main Line. You can't see it in this picture, but just over here is the Lowell Salem line. And I think it's in the next one. So it's right there. So as you can see, they came close. And of course, again, we know where this still exists, so we know where that goes. And it follows almost the same path. It's just maybe a half a mile south, if that. This shows the trolleys going over the Main Street, the trail on Main Street over the tracks. This is a boxcar behind the old fire station. Help me out. I'm guessing the old fire station was roundabout where the new one is being built, in that area? Right. Okay. So I'm guessing North Street's over here in this picture?
I'm not sure, I can't see it that well.
Okay.
It's right where the parking lot in back of the town hall is. I believe they moved part of it to one of the side streets.
Okay. So this is the Tewksbury Center Station, and preview, I threw this in. That is the same building. And I think a lot of people do know that. That's very nice. So I said earlier, off to the side, there's an awful lot of opportunities to do research here, to find things out that I don't know. And I know that we could probably find out more about this person. So anyone get any ideas and want to go off and do some research and things they see here, go ahead, let me know. I'm sure David could tell us about
I
it.
believe that the late Doris McPhail's father was the guy with the lanterns and the one who was in control of the center, the Tewksbury Center Station. And she did leave some items to the Tewksbury Historical Society, which we have some.
Oh, so we have those.
Yes.
Well, there you go. Right. So this picture, I believe, is from a steeple of the church that was in town. I'm not sure if that church is still there, but it's showing the crossing basically at North Street. And in the background, I don't know if people know, but where the North Street School is, the elementary school is now, that was Patton's greenhouses. I believe this is the Patton that wrote our history book, right? Another shot of crossing. And now this is the Almont Station. This is, when someone mentioned the Tewksbury Junction was on North Street, this is the crossing of the current line on North Street. And I gotta tell you, I ride my bike, I walk, I jog. My girls went to the soccer school. I spent some time on foot around here looking for any remains, any signs, found it. If anyone can find something, please let me know. I cannot find any remains at all.
It's in a different spot from the other Tewksbury Station one, right?
Yeah, this has, well, if it's on North Street, it has to be on one side or the other. So, yes. Okay. And that's another view of it. This one here, that was a story David told me, and I did not write it down. But the gal, I guess, and again, jump in if you know, yeah. They, I guess people used to, back in this time period, it was common for people to take the train here to the North Shore, Newburyport, Plum Island.
Plum Island was the spot.
That was,
A lot of Tewksbury folks congregated on Plum Island, and that was the spot that folks, I don't know if that in that particular picture. One just little Mary Garland story. She taught was actually Gene Winters, grade school teacher at the Foster School. And I asked her one time, this is when I was on the school committee years ago, how many kids did she have in the class? And she said 49. I said, you know, how do you know it was 49? She said, well, if it was 50, I would have had an A.
Look at that, look at that.
there you go. Baldwin Station. Nancy, this is one you gave me. Do you know where that is? Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Is that Wilmington?
Baldwin Station.
So there's a Baldwin area in Wilmington, I don't know. Yeah.
And this upgrade, this is new for this version. We added some info on some pictures on the trolleys that came later. And we've already seen this picture here. So it's going over the B&M down there. And it's another shot. I would imagine the Lowell Salem is under there somewhere. I mean, the Lowell Lawrence. There's a nice shot of, we don't know where this trestle is, but I was looking at this, and where Cumberland Farms is now, across from Walmart. A few years ago, the commission handled a demolition for what was there, and it was basically a farm building. They had a lot of chickens. Was it Little?
Longwood Farm, I think.
Yeah. For some reason, this reminds me of that. I'm wondering if that's in that area. But if anyone can identify this, let me know.
But you know, Franklin Paul-Antonio, who is Tewksbury florist, he told me that his family was in Wakefield, but his father owned a lot of greenhouses, and one of the sections of greenhouses is where Tewksbury florist is now. And every Saturday, he would take the trolley with his father up to, well, he was in Wakefield, I don't know where it started.
Yeah.
Up to the greenhouse, they get
Wow.
off, and then the turnaround is right in front of where the Wamaset Indian is pretty much there.
Where?
Where the Wamaset Indian.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The turnaround was there, and then to go back down. So
Yeah.
I do know that. That's what a lot of that other bridge that you have, I believe.
Right,
Is
right.
there too.
So this might be that.
Hey, Bill, do you know with those tracks, I don't know if they're still there, but I used to go blueberry picking when you go off 38 and you go up to the electric, whatever that
Where
electric.
National Grid is.
There's all tracks back there, all those tracks.
You're talking about where the power lines cross?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it runs
Yes.
parallel to 38.
Yes, yeah, it went across. In fact, is it Gold's Gym further down?
Yes.
You can see the right of way back there.
Okay.
And behind, if you go Old Main Street, where Vic's is, you can see the tracks down there.
So what
I-
line was that?
Pardon me?
What line was that?
That was the Lowell Lawrence line. That's the one that ran between the Bleachery and Tewksbury Junction.
Bill, when the train that, with all the boxcars, many boxcars that go across Shawshene Street once, where does that originate and where does it go today, do you know?
Shawshene Street, you're talking about the,
Shawshene
yeah.
Street down more toward the end over end.
yeah,
There is
Yes.
scheduled at the same time every day. I forget exactly what time it is, and then they get boxed in.
In North Street.
Oh, yeah.
And North Street as well. I'm just wondering what branch might that have been and what is it?
oh, yeah. No, that runs from the bleachery, or that part of Lowell, you know, through Wamisit still, and it runs behind Main Street, further north of the Lowell Lawrence, what's left of the Lowell Lawrence, and crosses North Street, you know, runs behind East Street, eventually crosses East Street, crosses Shawshene, and it runs down, basically it runs to what is now called, I don't know if it's called Wilmington Junction or Andover Junction, but over on Ballard, are you familiar with Ballard Vale in Andover?
Yes.
Ballard Vale Road, Ballard Street, running it right out, as soon as you cross the tracks in Ballard Vale, before you go up the hill, take a right onto Ballard, you follow that down. Lowell Junction, it's called now. It comes in there, and it connects to the B&M line. That comes up to Ballard Vale and goes north, and goes south down to Wilmington Junction and into Reading, that line.
There are all little spurs over in that area, and I never knew Eddie Bowley, but he at Tewksbury Metals was one of the largest on the East Coast of car crushing, and it's my understanding you fill up cars, you know, boxcars or whatever there, and then they go up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and they're off in boats to other places unknown.
Right.
But I always wondered if, you know, I guess you can still get Portsmouth, New Hampshire from there. But
Yeah, I've been down over the other side. If you follow South Street, as you know, it dead ends, right? But at one time it used to continue over to what's Lowell Junction, and the railroad was there in the Shawshene River. They're all kind of meet there, and you know, the line runs under 93. It runs under Tewksbury Street / Vale Street, right? Tewksbury Street in Andover, Vale Street in Tewksbury. Of course, it's one way now because they don't want to rebuild that bridge. But
this is, I would say, a question for another time perhaps, but the history certainly of the trolleys would be a good one to
I agree,
know,
yeah.
because I'm understanding that you could go from Silver Lake was the East Boston Riviera, and
That's
you
true.
could
My
get
mother and father used to go there and take.
Okay, wait a minute, I got to write that down. I like that.
because you could take from East Boston and get out there in pretty good time, and these we're talking about like around 1900. There are all sorts of little lots,
Right.
and I think it was 1948. The houses started being winterized over there. But the trolleys really got people around pretty effectively 100 years ago.
Yeah,
I think Nottingham's Lake in Billerica had a similar story.
yeah.
Yeah, noted for future reference, if we do this presentation again, we'll
Trolleys.
spend some time with the trolleys.
Were the trolleys and the railroads connected to each other?
I don't believe so. Trolleys were
Separate?
electric?
The society has a picture of the trolley tracks right out here on Main Street, right at this intersection.
Oh, yeah, okay. There's, Nancy found this picture here of basically waiting to be picked up at the Pike House, somewhere. There was one trolley where there's a picture, you think it's here, this intersection here, right? Yeah. When it comes to the trolleys, we'll say to be continued. How's that?
Right.
So when I originally did this, I did basically the past, the way things are now, and then what we hope is doing for the future. So just before, I added these recently. Just before the line crossed the Concord River, went into that part of Lowell, the bleachery. This is basically that area. There's a road here, just the river is here. There's some houses and the river is here. Opposite that abutment, here and on this side, it carried the line over this road, but then it also, in a short distance, carried it to the river. And I got a shot. It was tough because it's private property, so I was a distant. But this is what's, as you can see, this was abandoned a long time ago. This has not been touched for a long time. So most of this is covered by ivy. But that's what's left of the, I don't know the correct term, but basically this side of the river, the abutment that held the bridge up on this side. And I tried to get a shot from the other side, but it was too far away. You mentioned the tracks by the power lines. Behind our storage place, CubeSmart, behind there, the line right behind the parking lot in the back, the rails are still there. And this shot is looking towards the open area there where it crossed that area where the power lines now run. And this is behind, sorry, I'm better with the keyboard. This is behind the cemetery, behind Chandler Street. And there are actual ties still, oh yeah. I guess where there was no need to remove things because they wanted to do something there, they just let nature take care of it. And this is the spur going up the senior centers and further on there. This is as far as you can go on the right of way behind Chandler Street. That's a little building that's behind the Rod and Gun Club. So I'm going to move along here. This is getting to my neighborhood. This is on the other side of Pinnacle Street and behind those 55 and older place. Those buildings are built on the right of way. Between here and Pinnacle Street are those built. This is behind there. When I get to the end, you'll see that it was questionable as whether or not that should have happened. These structures, they'll be there forever. This is basically just a little, they used granite back then to build trusses over these little brooks and stuff. And the right-of-way is up there. Okay, so these are new. Has anyone tried the Maker site? The state, this is the state's website. It gives you access to the database of all of the historical survey forms. As Nancy was mentioning earlier, the ones that were just completed for as part of the survey for the historic districts will be up here. It's not the most modern website, and it's really difficult but if you're patient and stubborn, you can usually find what you want. So you would pick the town, then you would pick what type of form, the structure, and then the subtype, railroad. And I cheated here. This is a shot of one of the new surveys. And I have that, well, we don't need it. This is one of the surveys done, completed by the consultants that were doing these for us for the historic district. And this one here happens to be, does this little triangle look familiar? That's Tewksbury Junction. And this is the current railroad that's still in use. Livingston Street, right here, Pinnacle, Pinnacle. And that shot of the right-of-way earlier was here. So what this is when they built this railroad after this one. They built this in 1774, I think this was 54. So they went over the line the branch going to Lawrence. And when they did that, they built I have more pictures later. Where are we? Oh, maybe I removed that. No, I apologize, I removed that one. Let's go back to this. I'm going to, tell I'm an old user because I know the keystroke ways of doing things much more than the mouse way. So this is the actual form, Windows document. Yeah, Word document. So as you can see, this is what's left of the walls, the two sides of the, you know, the underpass, if you will. This was filled in. No idea when it was filled in, but it's quite a time ago. I believe this section of the railroad was abandoned in 1926, so it's almost 100 years. When I came across this, no one I talked to had any idea what this was there. So we recovered some of our history that may or may not have been lost, but certainly wasn't, people didn't talk about it, let's put it that way. So we have this, and further down, there's a form where the brook comes under, there's a culvert, a similar structure there. That's been inventoried, there's a form for that. And somewhere along here, I learned this last year, I had no idea, but there's another similar underpass like the one here that took the Lawrence line under, that I'm told is farmers used to use to move their cows, their cattle back and forth to different sections of their farms, not have to deal with the railroad. So these have all been done, they've all been submitted. So let's go back to the presentation. So yeah, that just lists them. Okay, so future. This law was passed in 1976. Someone back then had some foresight that these right-of-ways might be used, the old right-of-ways, basically where the railroads ran, even though they were the use was being discontinued, that they might be useful for something in the future. Now that's almost 50 years ago, that's 45 years ago. And of course, as we know, over the last 20-ish years, the movement to make the rail trails and things. So someone had some foresight. And what this law does is it puts a process in place where if a developer or someone wants to build a structure on a former right-of-way, they have to go through a process with the state through the building inspector, the local town building inspector, commissioner now. And it does require a public hearing. Where similar to the kind of public hearing we have for, a demolition permit, right? And it's designed to give the public a say in whether or not that resource, if you will, should be lost.
Just a general question, we have rail trails here in Tewksbury, who owns them?
Exactly, I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know if it's the town or if it's the
Some,
Commonwealth or if it's the railroad company.
I'm sure it depends. Some years ago, I attempted to involve myself in the rail trail committee, but I backed off on that. But one of the things I did learn from a little bit of time is that one of the reasons they were seeking CPC funds, money, was to pay consultants, attorneys to do deed and title research of the land where the various rights of way are still exist.
Come down to an insurance question, if someone gets hurt on there and they want us, who is it that
Right.
owns it? Yeah. That's just a thought.
So, and I forget how, I don't even remember how I found this, but it was accidental. I was not aware, and did anyone, other than from the last presentation, is anyone aware of this? Right. And so, again, future, so rail trail preservation, so rail trails are definitely preserving and putting them to good, I would argue, it's opinion, but to good use as rail trails. Private organizations, so as far as I know, nothing exists for these old railroads, but something like the Middlesex Canal Association, for example.
It's over the old Faulkner Mills in Billerica.
Yeah, yeah, my usual introduction I would do is I would mention Billerica since that's where I'm from, but since everyone knows me here. So one of my key resources here, and I have one more, but I didn't bring it. These two roads written by this gentleman, Ronald Dale Carr. Warren borrowed these for a while because there's if you're interested at all in this, the state is, I've been in places, I've worked in places, Southborough, a few other places, and I go for walks, you know, for break and stuff. I'd recognize old rights of way, and I would look them up and I'd find them in here. So it's amazing what is around us that we don't know, and the history that's associated with it. Real quick, again, growing up in Billerica, we had horses. And there were places all around. I lived near the Manning Forest. And one of the places we used to ride was like an open, like a road. Turned out, learned this years later as an adult, had no idea what it was then. It's the Middlesex Turnpike. A piece of the remain of the Middlesex Turnpike that was abandoned. There are old stagecoach roads. And unfortunately, a lot of it has been lost to history in that there are things there that people don't know what they were or how they were used. So I mentioned the topo maps earlier. The website for the historical ones at UNH. I use maps a lot. I'm not a fan of Google, but I am a fan of Google Maps. And most recently, did I put this up here? Yes, Oliver. Is anyone familiar with Oliver? If you look at the inventory form I showed, the Word document, the piece that showed Tewksbury Junction, showed where it was, that was taken from Oliver. Check it out. If you type in Oliver, Massachusetts, you'll find it. The Historical Commission was contacted by someone in the state back in 2014. By that I mean me, because I was the chairman at the time. 2014, because someone in the state was working on this project, and they had questions with regard. It shows there are overlays in this map, things you can see, you know, roads, bridges, things like that, but also the items on the MACRIS database. You can see those on the Oliver site. And he was updating and building things for the Oliver site, and there were several structures related to the state hospital that he was trying to verify whether they still existed, because that was done in the 70s by the first group of members of the Historical Commission when it was first created. And sadly, a lot of them were gone. So I went out and did a little field research to try to find things and confirm things for him. So that was how I found out about Oliver. And it's since been completed. It's a tremendous resource. So. And this, I visited this back in 2014, I think. What's left of the history of the B&M, that's another topic, it's another presentation, it's challenging, how's that? But what's left of their assets, their historical assets, is here. And one of the things that's there is this, it's like a chest freezer kind of thing, you know. And what it is, when you open it up, they have these on folded up on hangers, these huge maps And back around the early 1900s, I forget what organization, I think it was a federal organization, that ordered the complete mapping of all the lines that existed in the country at the time. So these were produced as part of that. And I did handle a few on my visit. They're fragile. They need, I don't know what the folks that run this, I don't know if they have a plan of scanning and getting them digitized, but I hope they do. But they were fascinating because I was looking at Tewksbury Junction, and it shows you each point on the Y. There was a station there, and they had names. I forget. I should have written it down. But my intention was to go back there. So if anyone wants to know where that is, it was a rainy day, so it was a good day to do it. And that is it.